So we just talked about how Sarah and all them, they represent the different forces, and in order for the emergence of anything, there needs to be the different forces at play. So Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Esau, they're all together. It's an interplay, dynamic interplay, and in order for transformation and for things to evolve, there needs to be the different types, right?
The different four forces at work
Uh,
creatively so that the potential can emerge into a whole new creation.
so, what was Jacob's ladder represent? Remember Jacob's ladder? It goes up to heaven.
Well, well
He lays his head at the rocks, and then the ladder goes to heaven.
see, to me, that's a metaphor or a poetic description of that that overcoming or transcending this illusion that God is separate, that there is in fact a connection, there is no separation.
So how does Jesus represent this idea that of the illusion that God is separate? And does this relate to also when the tent was broken, the tent separating God at his death,
Oh yeah,
the tent and everything?
the veil of the temple
Yeah.
was
And,
torn.
and can we get back to this also, the Jacob's ladder, how the angels were going down and the humans were going up? And this is interesting. Or there was like an idea that the humans were going down and the angels were going up. I heard or something. And this was like this is kind of paradoxical because you think that the angels would be coming down, but then it makes you think like maybe humans are angels and like
Yeah. So you see that all of that is a part of this whole idea of overcoming the illusion of separation.
so. Can you explain this more and how how it relates to maybe Jesus and this type of stuff? And maybe it does.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get that later. But
Yeah. Well, you see, again, it's like the question that you raised earlier about why Jesus was willing to go through the crucifixion. See, this was both his own growing and emerging and exploding awareness that there is no separation. I am not a separate being. I am not a separate ego. I'm not a, I'm only pretending to be that I'm only pretending to be a human. I'm not I'm not a human being. I'm only being human, pretending like I'm a human. And this was all a part of that final realization for him, but also a demonstration for all of us that there is no separation.
so this ladder, it's connecting the heavens and the earth. That these are one,
Yes.
and that's why. But why did he achieve that at that particular moment? He had to be prepared for that. There was enough.
Yeah. See, he wasn't fully prepared. He struggled. The biblical story again, whether it happened in fact or legendarily, the Garden of Eden thing. I mean, the Garden of Gethsemane, where he wrestled. You know, do I want to go through with this? Can't you take this cup from me? Do I really have to go through this in order to for this full realization? I'm up against a wall and I can't get through this wall. And he had to be up against the wall and realization that there was nothing he needed to do because it was already done.
But if it was already done, why did he go through it then?
Yeah, that's the question.
So, but Jacob, he was prepared when he did that. But so okay, you mentioned that thing. I remember you talk about this idea that when you're up against the wall, nothing will get you through the wall, but it is nothing that gets you through the wall.
Right.
Another paradoxical
Yeah.
idea. Nothing will get you through the wall, and nothing gets you through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Real, the realization that there is no thing, there is no problem to be solved, no separation to be overcome. So if you give up, that's something. If you keep pushing, that's something. If you beg for rescue, that's something. There is nothing. And coming to the realization that there is nothing that will get you through the wall, and then coming to that realization leads you to the possibility of realizing there is nothing to be overcome.
Yeah, thoughts of that, Grandpa?
See, you can't. We really can't grasp that. See, that was interesting, symbolic.
Yeah.
It's hard to grasp. It is.
Huh.
It's ungraspable. Because to grasp it is something. Is to try to grasp it is something.
And yeah, that's it. So okay, nothing gets you to the wall. And then has this relate to Jacob's thing? Or does
Well, see, he had that same thing that there was nothing that he needed to accomplish, nothing that he needed to create, no homemade plan of protection that he needed to create and promote.
So are you saying that like the flow is always there, but nothing can get you to the flow?
Right.
But only those who refuse to accept it. So you talk about banging your head against the wall.
Yeah.
What was that, Grandpa? About banging your head against the wall, and then also can you relate to the Da Vinci Code because you talked about the Da Vinci Code and the well in the Da Vinci Code, and also I want you to talk about that what is that show that we're talking about with there's the outside world and then there's the inside world.
Oh, the Game of Thrones.
The Game of Thrones. But first, talk about the Da Vinci Code.
Well, see, to me, this was the most important part of that whole movie, when he kept having that flashback of the time that he had fallen into the well, and he said that when he was in the bottom of the well, everything that he tried to get out of the well failed, and he just came to the realization there was nothing that he could do to get it, and that's when he had this momentary awareness of an eternal reality. He had an encounter with Jesus. He called it. See, that was his software, but he realized that that was his moment of awareness, a full spectrum of awareness, that there was no problem to overcome, and he had that sense of being at home, at peace.
And then he found himself outside of the well.
Well, see, that's it was just that brief reference to that experience, but see, that was all that one little momentary excerpt from the movie was in juxtaposition of all the rest of this that tried to protect and promote the content of Jesus' ministry and 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 of Christianity, and what this one excerpt, his reference to the well, was the realization that in that moment of awareness there is no content, there is no what's the chalice? There's no I always forget.
A Holy Grail.
Yeah, there is no Holy Grail. There is no container which is the Grail that holds the Holy Grail. There is no such thing.
So what is there?
There's only an awareness of the presence.
So any other thoughts, that Grandpa?
No.
Remember you talked about that book, Real Presences?
Yes.
What is Real Presences?
Well, see, what he's saying is the same thing, and he puts it in the context of art, all forms of art, music, literature, poetry, etc. That great art, any form of great art, is a manifestation of the artist's awareness of the real presence of something that transcends any articulation, but points toward it. And what he's saying is that the world is all kinds of secondary commentary on the presence is, proliferates. The secondary proliferates, but the primary is very elusive and rare. And what he's saying is great art calls to our attention, calls into our awareness, and awareness that there is a presence behind all appearances.
How does it do that?
Well, again, like go back to my metaphor about music. See, the presence and awareness of the presence that lies behind a musical composition comes about as a result of the realized potential and the synergy emerging from the articulation of this piece of music. And when all the creative instruments and players and conductor and audience come together, then you become aware of the real presence that lies behind the creation, the initial creation of that particular piece of music.
Is that the flow, or?
Yes.
So
Then everybody's in the flow in those moments. And when and that the flow in that moment of being a participant in the presentation of a great composition is similar to and recapitulates the awareness that the composer had when composing that particular excuse me. Hello. Hello.
all right, so some music calls attention to yourself, right? You're talking about some music very ego based, makes attention to yourself, but then some music moves you beyond yourself. I remember I had that metaphor when I was listening to Mozart, and I said, "Perfect music dances you to a standstill."
Mm-hmm. I remember that. I've forgotten that.
Yeah. But what is the?
See, the standstill, that's what happened to the men on the disciples on the Mount of Transfiguration. That awareness danced them to a standstill.
Mm.
Just suddenly
Any other thoughts?
they took their breath away, took their strength away, took their ego away. It danced them to a standstill.
Any other thoughts? Second.
No.
So this is interesting because when I would make my raps, super spontaneous because it wasn't me that was doing it. When I got nervous before basketball, I didn't know this at the time, but I learned. I used to say it in tape recorders. I used to be like, okay, I have to calculate. Okay, I'm gonna say this line. Okay, now I'm gonna say this line, and that stuff wasn't that good. But then finally one day, accidentally my tape recorder broke, and I started freestyle writing. Then my stuff was amazing because, what happens with a good rap is the beginning is seen in the end, and that's a metaphor of existence. If you're a good rapper, a lot of rappers suck. But if you're a good rapper, the beginning is the end. There is no difference between any aspect of the rap because the first two sounds are going to be expressed later because there's going to be a connection between this part and this part, but then this part's also going to be connected to this part because each part is rhyming. These aren't separate rhymes. This is all one whole. It's like one organism.
Yeah, it's a creative interplay.
So when I would make my raps, I would start off and I would just go nonstop. Don't stop. Don't think what you're going to say next. Super spontaneity. But it's not just super spontaneity. It's not randomness. I'm in the flow. Like there is an order. There is a structure because I'm thinking about transcendent thoughts. I'm putting that down. But I'm putting it down all in one motion. Now it's all one whole, but it's separate. There's separation, but it's one. The beginning's in the end. The beginning is the end, but there's difference.
Yeah, that sounds like a clear example of the flow. Clear example of the rap then becomes the realized potential and the synergy that emerges from the creative interplay of all of that.
And the only way that I got there was by accident. I didn't get there from here. My tape recorder broke one day, but I practiced. But if I never practiced on the tape recorder so much, maybe I wouldn't have such currency to make those amazing raps because that was all the practice. But I couldn't get there from here.
Probably.
If I would have known how to get there, I wouldn't have got there.
Yeah. Or if you relied on knowing how to get there, you never got there.
Yeah, thoughts on that, Grandpa?
No, that's good.
So you talk about aesthetic arrest too. It brings you to aesthetic arrest. What is this and everything?
Well, it's just you're just suddenly overwhelmed. See, I remember one of my first clear awarenesses of that was driving down the Santa Ana freeway, and I just happened to glance off to my right, and I saw this street. It was just beautiful. I was I wouldn't say overwhelmed, but I was just struck with an awareness of how beautiful it was. And as I was driving down further, I started thinking, wait a minute, what was that? It was 4th Street, Santa Ana, one of the ugliest.
4th Street though.
Yeah.
4.
4th Street, Santa Ana, one of the ugliest streets in the in the city.
Uh-huh.
See, that was a moment of aesthetic arrest. Just everything stops when you're overwhelmed, when you're struck with the beauty of something.
Yeah, thoughts of that. So
See, a rock, you were saying you look at a rock and it would be just ugly, but you could also look at it and have an eternal moment. That oxymoron, eternal moment of aesthetic arrest.
so that eternal moment, that's what eternal life is.
Yes, apparently.
So there is no self, right? So the interesting thing is, I was just listening to this lecture where this metaphysicist was talking about these notions that split brain patients, there's more than one self in the head. If you have a split brain patient, they become two separate selves. One side wants to do one thing, the other side of your body wants to do another thing, and you're not even aware of this, but there is two of you. So how can you be a self if there is more than one self inside here and stuff? But so then the guy's asking the questions, okay, so how do you get eternal life? Well, what if you're an amnesia person? You get amnesia. So what part of you gets eternal life? The part of you that had the amnesia, or the part of you before the amnesia? And like, so what is the self, and what is eternal life, and what is all this stuff?
See, it goes back to that. No one looks upon the face of God and lives. See, when you have that moment of that eternal moment of awareness, you die. The I can no longer exist. No one looks upon the face of God and finds that the I, the ego, continues to live.
So it's not you that dies literally, but it is the true you.
No, it's all of these selves, whether it's one self or two selves, or all of that dies.
You become one with everything. You're in the flow.
Yeah.
What about the Hindus talk about, like, I am that? Who knows? But everything's one.
Yeah.
So this is eternal life, this idea. But then what about the idea of an afterlife, though?
Let's see, that's our way of rationally explaining what it is that's eternal.
So you have to have like a currency or a metaphor for this.
Right.
But it's possible too, though, that if you are to think that you're a self and everything, that after you die, whatever does continue, if something does continue, that it has to, if it, like the Hare Krishnas, they say, if you do die and you still think that you are yourself and stuff, or you still have desires, like you want to eat ice cream or whatever, then you're going to be sent back, or you have to go through, various tortures and stuff, and, or you go to heaven if you were, really good, but then you still have to be sent back, and like, what is these ideas? Like,
well, see, that's beyond, I suspect, anyone's full comprehension or awareness. But the only thing that becomes reasonably clear to me, you and I have talked about before, and that is that the more discipline we have in getting free of our attachments, the less difficulty we're going to have in what it is that happens after we die. And the thing that I've used to illustrate that is that some people who've had these near-death experiences have just a very painful, ugly awareness, and others have an awareness of just absolute overwhelming beauty and peacefulness and love and harmony. Now, what's the difference between these two people who've had the same experience of dying?
Okay, let's continue this in 1 second. I'm just gonna video.